It's the Coaching Life, episode 163. 163. Yeah, that's correct.
Is that counting our mini episodes as an episode?
Yes,
I don't think
it counts every episode that has a number attached to it, like episode number 13, 14, 15. And I think we did attach numbers to those. However, we also did a number of what we called bonus episodes back in the day, and like where we had an extra one during the week, and we did not include those in the number. So I think if you actually, like if you took the analytics from Spotify, we actually might have like 164, 165 episodes, something like that. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Build them up.
Yeah. So, tell us where you are today. Are you building? Are you adding on a room there, or what? Looks like you have.
This is ground zero or headquarters for NBA 2K.
Oh boy.
2K4, whatever, and Madden, and
you're creating an esports studio.
And I'm creating an esports student.
Yeah. Yeah. One of your boys, at least, is probably going to be a script student here if they ever go visit that esports facility that we have over in Scripps Hall. That's for sure.
Yeah. Can you? Is that something you have to major? Can you minor in esports?
Yeah, I'm not even sure. Is there an esports major? Is there a major, or is
I thought so.
Oh, maybe. I really don't know. I mean, I just work here. No.
Yeah. Maybe not.
I don't know. I mean, because some of our programs are certificates. You know what I'm saying? Like podcasting is a certificate, and social media is a certificate, and we have so many. In addition to the schools, we have so many centers. Like WOUB is a center that gets where students get experiential learning. The Grid Lab is also a center, which is the virtual, gaming design, 360 stuff, and I don't know. That's not my forte, as you know. That's not me. I don't dabble in the video game department, but it's pretty popular.
Well, I'm confident in my ability to teach my kids how to play the game of baseball. However, I'm much more confident in their gaming ability than their baseball.
Playing baseball on a game. Do they play baseball video games?
Oh yeah, okay. Baseball.
So it's not just the what do they call the
Soccer,
one? I actually used to enjoy hockey back in the Atari days. Was it Atari or it probably would have been the first Nintendo, the cartridge that you had to put in and then push it down, and then if it didn't connect, you'd take it out and you blow it.
That's NES.
Was that a Nintendo?
Yeah, Nintendo Entertainment System.
I feel like there was
ice hockey.
Yeah, there was a hockey game that was really fun.
So you had the tall, skinny guy, the medium guy, and then the short, fat guy.
Yeah,
So they would if they would get in fights, scuffles. The short, fat guy would always beat the other guys, but the tall guys real fast. The medium guys kind of got everybody, or he's like he's not real fast, but he's pretty strong, and he's not real slow, but he's not that weak.
I admit I don't remember that much detail. That's you obviously. I do remember detail of the old RBI baseball game though, because when I was in college, we had RBI baseball tournaments in our dorm. And
now was that RBI one just with the big
the little
players?
The little fat stubbly guys that
stand
back, hit it and then they'd run real fast around. Well, if you had Harold Baines,
baseball too.
What's that?
You probably never played two, did you?
Were the people bigger? They actually looked like people instead of.
They were skinnier, and they're all the same. It was more like it looked more realistic, but it wasn't. But it was the first baseball game that I know that you could actually dive across the ground or jump at the wall, and rob a home run.
Okay.
Pretty cool stuff.
Well, we had a rule in our college RBI baseball tournaments, and that was they were straight pitch tournaments.
Kids
no
don't do that
curveballs.
now.
No
Yeah,
curveballs.
they don't do that now. I'm always like, why are you guys trying to strike each other out? I mean, it's
Is it pretty tough to hit?
Gaming's competitive now, man. I don't think you'd last.
Well, I mean, it was competitive with the straight pitch too, but I guess it depended. That was more. If you got the right team, you were going to be pretty good. Because you had a home run hitting team, and you didn't care what pitcher you used.
Right. So. Yeah. Yeah, it's not really like that anymore. Okay. Plus, you can play online against other players now, so it's really competitive. You know, there's no handshake agreements like that before the game starts. It's cutthroat. You're trying to beat the guy, get another win. So.
Are they playing for money? Are your kids playing for money?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
But definitely won't say it's impossible.
Did you do a Super Bowl board fundraiser this year for your baseball team or anything?
I've never done one of those.
Our junior high baseball team did one of those. I've done them in the past for other things, but they seem to be pretty good. They do pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to give away a decent amount every quarter also, but I think the final score gets the most. But depending on how you set it up, you can set it up any number of ways.
Yeah, I'm actually looking for a coach for 2 junior high baseball teams right now, 8th grade team and 7th grade team. So if anyone out there
don't have a coach for either one,
don't have one.
You got any former players any former players that are still that would have the time, like maybe they're in college and would they'd be able to help you out? I mean, it's
difficult because of the Sandlot scheduling is kind of weird. They start games at like 5:00, and so you got to be there.
Yeah, that's why I said like if they would have to be, college students or someone who doesn't have a job yet.
I mean, I haven't reached out to everyone on the list, but not getting too many inquiries. That's for sure. So I'd like to find someone that could kind of run the program and build it up. Take it on as their own and
that's really tough to find. I mean, it would be great. Sure. I hear you, but it's nobody aspires. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. It's not an aspiring, glorifying job to be a junior high coach of any sport, really. I mean, it really isn't. You're doing it right now.
I do, but let me tell you this.
I mean, it's fulfilling. Like if you enjoy coaching, then you're going to like it no matter what. You don't care what age it is. I guess some people care what age it is.
I know exactly what you're saying.
But you know what I'm saying?
I do. This is what I'm about to say is why one of the reasons I love this guy so much. Coach Tim Saunders, who coached a long time at Dublin Kaufman.
Yeah, coached the Megs.
Coached the Megs for a few years.
Yeah.
Ended up at Dublin Kaufman. Actually, I think he went to Indiana University. He was assistant coach for a while. Then went to Dublin Kaufman. He's in the state and the National Hall of Fame for high school baseball coaches. Mm-hmm. He is coaching junior high. Yeah, talking to him.
Oh, he's doing that right now.
Yes, he was doing that before. So he went to Dublin Jerome for a season.
Oh, did he?
Get things kind of together, help them out, and he was telling me he's planning on going back to junior high. He really loves the way that age group listens to him and are eager to learn and things like that. So there's what a great example we have.
Yeah.
As a society, an individual that has accomplished so much, is held in such high regard by so many great coaches, and he chooses now, to coach a junior high team so that he can share his knowledge.
To go to a level that really, you're not going to get a lot of recognition for it, and that's why.
Sure, right.
So if that's why you do it, then you're not going to do it. But
right. Oh yeah, sure, right.
But
try to get Coach Saunders on.
Yeah, we should
one day
for sure.
See if we can get him on air.
Yeah, he and I had the opportunity. The last time I saw him was actually at Dublin Jerome, but it wasn't for any Dublin Jerome event. It was the what do they call the Central Ohio COYBL Central Ohio Youth Baseball League. It was their annual preseason coaches meeting, and of course that's a huge league. I mean, we're talking about it covers a large portion of our state. I mean, it's not just Central Ohio. There are teams from down here that go up and play.
Yeah.
And so they always have their meeting at one of those larger schools in their auditorium, and they always have guest speakers. And it was right after I had written Building Champions, and he said, you know, the guy Doug Hare, I think is who the guy was. I think is that last name right? I think that's right. I think he was the director. May still be. I don't know. Does that name sound right?
It sounds very familiar.
I think that's
I'm wondering if he ran some tournaments or he was.
Well, yeah, they run tournaments. Yeah, they run tournaments.
It is him because
Berliner.
We reached out to Doug, or Doug reached out.
Oh, and we were talking about yes, when we were talking, because I don't know if you listened to the podcast or if I sent an email up there and asked him to distribute it, and he was curious. He was curious about the podcast, wanting to listen because, you know, we were saying some things about how leagues and organizations needed to have an overhaul, and I think you know, when you're a president of a league or an organization, that could offend you at first thought, right? At first glance, and I said, just give it a listen, give these first 7 episodes a listen, and let us know if you're not on the same page. And he was, and so he invited me to come up and basically talk about my book, because he had. I think he'd maybe read it, or he at least glanced through it and saw that, you know, what the chapters were about and how relevant it would be to all of his, you know, the coaches in that organization. And so I had 15 minutes, and the speaker right before me was Tim Saunders. He had 15 minutes as well.
Oh, great.
And then they did their business stuff, and so yeah, they had a half an hour of guest speaking, and then they did their business stuff. But he invited me to set up a booth. Like, that meeting for that league is like the OHSBCA clinic beforehand. There's vendors out there and everything, and I'm like, well, I'll leave you some books if you want to sell them for me, but I don't need to set up a booth. Plus, it was snowing like crazy that day on my way home as well. There were accidents on 270 and all that, but it was a heck of a lot of fun. But anyway, that was the last time I actually I run into Tim, Coach Saunders. So
Good deal.
I think he was coaching when Coach Danny T was a student at Meigs High School, and because Danny went to that state semifinal team. Was it semi, or did they go to the state championship in 1980? What would that have been?
76 was the last time. Then the previous, they made it in 76 and 96 to the state semis.
Oh, well, no, Danny wouldn't have gone.
Sorry, 76 they made it to the state
championship.
Championship. I'm pretty sure
they were runner-up.
Game that they lost. Yeah. They lost 1-0.
So Danny's not that old. He wouldn't have been on the 76 team.
And I don't think.
But Tim must have coached Danny though. Like, how long did Tim stay after?
Just 4 years. He was just at Meigs for 4 years. I think it was in the 80s. So it might have been early 80s. I think that Coach Saunders was there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, that was Coach Harrison. Coach Harrison went to the state.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Tim did actually. So Tim did coach Danny. That's the connection. That's how because when I was assistant Danny at Meigs back in 2001, we went up and scrimmaged Dublin Kaufman. It was like Coach Saunders' second or third year there, and
did you play against Brady Quinn?
You know what? That's a good question.
I think you did.
There's a good chance we did. They were pretty good.
You did.
Yeah, our kids from Meigs.
He was a good pitcher.
Old Buzzy Fackler was on that team, and there were some good athletes on that Meigs team. But boy, they found out the difference between Division I, big school, big time school. Oh, the facilities were phenomenal too. Compared to what they were used to.
They had nice facilities in Bevan Durham too.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned. It's kind of funny how we get off on tangents and then say some relevant things. You mentioned how Doug O'Hare is Doug Hare.
I think just Hare, Hare.
Yeah, when you present something to someone, the league president, coach, been doing it for a long time, and it doesn't align with some of the things that they've done. they can be offended by that. And I think that falls into this idea of, I've got this book here. I don't know if you've ever read this book. It's called The Coaching Life by Chris Stewart. But chapter 4.
Not as many people have read that one. I will tell you that.
Oh, I was talking
the sales have not done as well on that one.
No, but I love this. But I think this is written directly to coaches, whereas Building Champions, yes, and Building Champions is what is kind of fanned out from coaches, parents, players.
And I'll be honest with you, Pat. I actually do really like this. Like, I've gone back through and read several chapters of this again, and I don't even remember writing some of it. That's kind of weird to say that, but I'm like, who wrote that? But I know that there are a lot of useful things in this, and I'm not trying to sell a book, but I'm actually considering doing this because I think I jumped the gun in putting Building Champions out there because I continued to write after doing that, and that's why this one came out. And yet when people choose to buy a book from me or one of my books, they see that Building Champions has done better and they buy that one. That's the first one. The cover's pretty cool. It's got that baseball picture, but I've actually considered doing a second edition of Building Champions and including not all the chapters from this, but including several of the more impactful chapters from Coaching Life in that book, and then re-releasing it as basically one book instead of, because really the Building Champions actually still sells. I mean, I get from the publishing, I get monthly statements of how many books sold. This one does not sell as much. This one is kind of you could get this really cheap right now, actually, on Amazon, I believe. I think the last time I saw it, it was down to maybe $7 or $8. So, yeah, okay, yeah, that's highway robbery. I look at this book, like there's some books that that I keep handy, and this is one of them that I go back to. Cool.
And at different times and pull stuff out of, and I'm like, yeah, I don't agree with that, so I must be doing it the right way. No, I don't say that.
Tear some pages out, things like that.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it's a great book, and then, like I said, it's for coaching. Coaches out there who want to get better, and not just baseball coaches.
Oh no.
Or sports coaches.
No.
But leaders in general that you're coaching people or whatever it is. You can pick up this book and at least get some good ideas out of it. But chapter 4, and then speaking of that, getting good ideas, chapter 4 is entitled, what? Change is not a 4-letter word. Right?
Yes, literally and figuratively.
A lot of that comes from that initial, that statement is kind of built around this idea that if you hear something that challenges you, something that you believe or have done, that you immediately are offended by that, what you hear, and you want to defend yourself to it, as opposed to, listening and reviewing and evaluating, and possibly incorporating that, changing to that, or just using it to help you to continue to grow. So, it's important for people in coaching positions, in leadership positions, to be able to, I would say that's what leaders are, is people that are constantly growing. I know that you mentioned that in the chapter, but you should seek to find change, really.
Yeah. It's coming back to me now where I was at the time when writing this and this chapter. And I was thinking, particularly because, the sports community in general, but especially the baseball community, has traditionally been resistant to change. Like, in fact, when you hear the word tradition, it actually it's not synonymous with the word change. Tradition is typically an antonym of change, right? Like, you have a tradition, you have a traditional way of doing something, and you're going to continue to do it that way. And I'm as much of a purist at heart as anyone, right? You and I both are baseball purists, and some of these ridiculous changes that we've seen in the MLB are things that we have a hard time with. But at the same time, we have to come to a realization that, okay, well, for one, some things may be out of our control because things are always changing. Culture is changing, people are changing, families are changing, dynamics are changing, technology is changing, which means there are going to be aspects to our games and the way that we coach them that will have to change. They will have to change.
Absolutely.
I actually made the statement on the very first page of this chapter, coaching must change. Sometimes you need to change as the coach, but coaching it's got to be fluid. It really does. And I didn't know that early on. And it's one of the reasons I wrote this is again, as a reminder to myself that I've got to continue to grow, because that's what change really is. Or it could go either way. You could deteriorate or you could grow. And hopefully the kind of change that you're creating is going in a positive direction.
Yeah, I know one of the to paraphrase a statement out of the book. He said that if a coach that is coaching a coach with 20 years of experience, that's 20 years of growth. Because if a coach has coached the same way for every year that they've coached for 20 years, they're probably not very successful.
Yeah,
and I would say that idea of change is, or I guess variance. We're talking about the way culture has changed, and technology has changed. Everything changes around us. It creates variance in the way that we have to deal with people and deal with the game and deal with situations. And that is true from a program perspective. It's true from a team perspective, and it's true from an individual perspective. And then also it's true from a game detail perspective. And it's like, one of the biggest changes that I had to adapt to as a human being, I'm not even exaggerating this, as a human being, is the concept of the direction of the swing, and the fact that a swing does not go down, it comes up. That was such a huge change for me. And that's a change in baseball too, because there was a short period of time for a reason.
For some people, a short period of time. For some people, they're still shouting that from the rooftops, like Alex Rodriguez. And
they are, but here's what I'll say, Coach. Oh, I just knocked my camera. Here's what I'll say.
Getting fired up over there.
That now, so there's an evolution for me happening from okay, you're chopping down, you're creating that backswing on the baseball so it goes farther, to okay, you're swinging up, the swing's finishing up. You're actually trying to hit the bottom half of the ball because of the angle that it's coming in. So you're swinging up, but now I've changed a little bit more.
Going back around.
Well, not everyone needs to hear
the same
that story
thing. Yeah.
You know what I mean? There may be kids that need to hear, hey, see the top of the baseball, swing down, feel yourself swinging down on the ball. And I think that's what
A-Rod is doing. Yeah, and I think I've
absolutely.
even heard him kind of adjust the way that he explains that in recent years, to where he's basically saying that's what you feel, right? You can't feel yourself coming from here up, right?
Right.
You got to feel yourself coming. It feels like you're coming down, even though the plane of that swing is actually going up, because you're trying to match it with the plane of the ball, right? The plane that the pitch is coming.
Correct. Yeah, but that's why I like Kevin Wilson so much, because I think his approach to hitting instruction is just amazing.
Yep. What do you feel?
Because
tell me what you feel.
Exactly. He's talking. Okay, I'm going to teach him this hitter.
Yep.
I'm not going to teach
this concept,
a way to go, a method.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
I'm not going to have a teaching. I'm going to be a teacher, and that's. Well, I tell you what. You talk about a point to remember. If anybody's got a pen and they're writing and taking any notes, take this note down. People will always be more likely to follow a teacher than they will be to follow a teaching. They will remember a teacher much longer than they'll ever remember a teaching. Your teachings might be really good, and you might be really excited about your your methods and the things that you teach and your ideas, but they're not going to remember those. They're going to remember you. They're going to remember the teacher. And that's the difference maker. You ask any of these students in this university who their favorite professors are, it's the people that they remember. It's not the lessons. There are some lessons that are really good that they'll remember, but it's usually the person behind those lessons as well. And that's why Kevin Wilson is so appealing.
Yeah, I agree. And it allows them to go back, when it gives them that focal point of who the person is, who they were, and to be able to remember what they were able to take from those people.
Yeah.
I think that's a secret to, grief when you lose a loved one, is being able to focus on who you remember, who that person was to you and what they brought to you.
That's a great point.
That's how you're drawn. Like, so often we remember that person, but because of the loss, it hurts us so much.
Yeah.
And, it's gratitude over anxiety, right? Gratitude over, disappointment that, you think of the good things that person brought you, but it's easier to remember those things when you have that individual that you really like and that that you're drawn to. So that's Jesus' way of doing things, right?
Yep.
Jesus loves people.
Always comes back to him for us, doesn't it?
Yeah, right.
There's a reason for that.
He did great things. Did he do great things so that people could know how great he was? No, he did it because he loved people and he wanted them to love him, right?
Yeah.
And why did he do that? Because he has something that he wants to give everyone that loves him. Yeah. But he knew that he just couldn't make them do it. He couldn't force them to do it. He had to bring them with him.
Yeah.
So that's
good word.
It's that servant attitude. But yeah, how do we get there, right? So we mentioned methods and principles. Well, we mentioned methods.
I want to go back to that quote that you referred to at the beginning of this whole little segment, because
the experience.
Yes. The actual quote has been attributed to a handful of different people. I think the Stephen Covey might have been the last one that I saw, the one that I see most often. But the quote is, some people say that they have 20 years experience, when in reality they have 1 year's experience repeated 20 times. And I think the way I paraphrased it in the book was, there's a difference between 20 years experience and the same experience 20 years in a row. And there are people who say, I've got 20, I should get this job, or I should be this person because, I should be in this role because I've got 20 years experience. But you got to ask yourself, do you really have 20 years experience, like of continuing to move up, continuing to grow, or do you have you been doing the same thing for 20 years? Because that's different. That's different.
Yeah, your competency level hasn't increased if you're doing the same thing.
Yeah. And it comes down to, for coaches, it comes down to, are you still teaching things the exact same way now that you were 20 years ago? Because if you are, I promise you this, your game has changed in 20 years. Whatever game you're coaching, it's changed, and your kids have changed. I mean, granted, I'm not talking about the individual kid. I'm talking about people in general that are now your kids. They're different today than they were 20 years ago. Their experiences at home are different. Their experiences in school are different. What the culture is teaching them is different. Our government is different now. So many things are different, and we can't control that. But what we can control is how we adapt and how we make the changes that are necessary so that we can connect with these young people that we're trying to lead and guide in our sport, but also in life.
Absolutely. And that's when we get into the method and the principle conversation, because obviously the principles are steadfast. In most cases, you can break it down into a smaller level where you're talking about game strategy and mechanical improvement, things like that, where principles don't mean as much. But when you think about things like dignity and integrity and living the right way and being the best person you could be, those are the types of principles that you're trying to get across to these kids, these players that you're coaching. and you can't do that the same way.
Yeah.
From one decade to the next, you can't do it the same way from one kid to the next. It's going to change from one to the other.
Yeah,
you got to keep that in mind.
In fact, methods have to change, right?
Yeah.
And that's the big difference between principles and methods. Is principles never change. Like if you're operating on a principle, it shouldn't change. Like you should be strong in your principles. And there are aspects about our games that we play that you notice I'm hesitating in saying will never change, right? Because we could be surprised someday. But there are some principles to the game, like to the game of baseball, that have not changed. You're still pitching from 60 feet 6 inches. Now, will they move that back someday? They might. Right, the plate's still 17 inches. There's still 90 feet between bases, although it's a little shorter in the MLB because they made those huge bases.
Right, the bases are bigger.
I guess there have been some things, but there are certain rules to the game and the way the game is played. Right, you hit the ball, and you run to first base. Right, those are all those are principles that will not change, but the way you teach the way a player runs to first base probably should change if from what you were teaching 20 years ago, if you discover that there's a faster way to get there, right? And so that's what we mean by continuing. You will not know how to make changes if you don't continue to grow and change yourself. And,
right.
And that's
you need to seek that change. For
sure. Yeah, and so that I think I used an example about like a method that changed for me. The difference between principles and methods. And at one point in my coaching career, I just made a conscious decision to change something, and it was here it is. There's some things that I strongly believed and held firm to when I first began coaching. I'm talking about when I was 28, 29, 30 years old, right? And even further beyond that, probably even into my late 30s, I had this rule that, it was sort of a rule of thumb that I felt like I needed to always keep parents at a distance. And so I said I will not have any conversation with parents. I had a policy. So it was going to be impossible for me to be friends with any parents of the kids that I coached. And so it was a no conversation with parents policy. Basically, my method was that I will communicate everything that needs to be communicated to the players. It's the players' responsibility to communicate to their parents. And my thought was, okay, so here was sort of the principle behind the method. The principle was that if I have a conversation with the parent, and that conversation was like positive and good humored, somebody else on the team saw me hanging out with this parent, right? Then it might be perceived by others that I like that parent's kid more, and I'm going to give them special treatment. And it might even be perceived by that parent that I should give their kid special treatment because I'm their friend and I hang out with them, right? And so I just kept everybody at a distance, and I said we're not gonna have any conversations whatsoever. And then I realized that that's probably not a great approach. Are you still there, Pat?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, because your video's frozen on my screen, and you're not now. Man. It just woke up, so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's just, and it makes no difference. Like it's like what I see isn't what actually gets put out on the podcast.
Okay.
What you're seeing of you is what gets put out there because it's recording to your phone, and I'm getting a cloud stream version just so that I can see you and talk to you.
Gotcha.
But anyway, no. I just came to a point where I'm like, that's dumb. Like this is that's a dumb. Like I get the principle, right? The principle makes sense to me, but
yes.
But that method isn't necessary in order to uphold that principle. And so I changed that, and I realized, no, I've got to develop relationships with parents. We need our greatest asset in sports, the sports that we coach, are the parents of our kids that that are playing for us, right? They're our greatest asset. They're going to be our greatest volunteers when we need volunteers for things to help with things. And so even though I still did not want to be persuaded by a parent to play their kid more or whatever, and I didn't want the perception to be out there that I liked this person more than you, those were still principles that I wanted to hold to. I did not.
Right.
I changed my method though, and I went ahead and had conversations with them because I also realized that let's be honest, high school kids, junior high age kids, they're not always the greatest communicators. Okay, so as much as you want to say it's your responsibility to communicate to your parents, if we have parents listening, you don't always get that communication, do you? Or even worse, sometimes the communication is incomplete, right? They give you part of the story, or they give you, and so your parents are adults, and you're an adult, and so we ought to be able to be adults and have conversations when we need to. And so that's just one example of over the years how the method changed for me. I had a hard line and decided that even though I want to continue to uphold the principle, of this is the team that I'm coaching, which means I've got to make the decisions about what we do, our strategy, who's playing, who's not, things like that. Yet I really value you as mom and dad of this child who's playing on this team as well, and we really need your support in every way of this team. We know that we have your support of your child. Like there's no. I mean, I guess it's not always that way, unfortunately, but for the most part, the parents are going to support their individual child. We need your support of the team, and there's no way that you're going to be able to build that if you don't talk, if you don't have conversations, if you don't communicate. Yeah.
Yeah. So that that's a principle in itself. Trying to of wanting to create that type of unity. Yeah. Amongst parents of the team. So that everyone is going in the same direction. So that so there you go. You're thinking, well, how do I do that? Yeah. And at the same time, maintain this principle of not appearing as if I'm favoring one kid over another because of a relationship I have with their parent or grandparent or whatever it is. You have to adapt to it. Yep. So that's something that you evaluate as you go through the season or seasons, and you think about what you can do to make each one to maintain each one, but at the same time allow each one to coexist. There's so many examples of these things. I think you can't even. That's why if you think about if you haven't changed coaching in a number of years, it's almost impossible to do that if you're striving to be the best that you can be, because there's always going to be something that you think you could have done better, and that has trickles down to impact other things.
Well, there's a good chance if you haven't changed in many years of coaching that you're frustrated right now. And then you might be thinking about getting out of it, right? Because you will if you
the kids don't listen, right? They're not the same.
Exactly. I can't connect to these kids anymore, right? They're not the same. They won't listen. They won't. And usually, if you've got a really frustrated coach who gets angry about this generation and why and this group of kids are impossible to coach, listen. I'm going to be really honest. I get it. I totally get it. But we still got to find a way. We got to find a way. So. And so that means, here's the answer. It's Jocko's answer. Good. That gives me a chance to grow too, and find a way that I can connect with people of a new generation and inspire them to be the best that they can be. Rather than just throwing up your hands and saying it's somebody else's job. Look in the mirror and say, maybe the issue is mine. I don't like where we're going. Like, I don't necessarily like where the culture is going. You're becoming older and you're getting a little set in your ways. But if you still have the passion and the desire to coach, then you have to change. You have to make changes. You got to make adjustments. There are going to be things that you've got to do differently than what you really. So ask yourself: Is this a principle or is this a method? The way I talk to my church about it I said, as Christians, as churches, we really need to realize that there are things that we believe, and there are things that we believe and hold fast to, and there are things that we value, that we enjoy doing, but other people might do them differently, and that's okay. And I think for years, one of the big problems in the church was that we felt like there was a whole bunch of things in this closed fist hand. So I call it closed hand versus open hand. In the closed hand are essentials. These are things that we've got to believe, or you can't. I mean, you can't say you're a Christian if you don't hold on to these things, right? And they're not as many things in that fist as what historically the church has tried to put in there, right? It was the whole issue of the New Testament. The Pharisees and the Sadducees and the religious people tried to put a whole bunch of things in there that didn't belong there, and Jesus said no. There's freedom in these areas. You might want to do things this way. That's great. You got the freedom to do that, but somebody else may not want to, right? And so in that chapter, in fact, I think I liken it to ice cream. The sports that we coach, right? The sports that we coach are like ice cream. They're awesome. I love baseball is ice cream, and there are a lot of ways. There are a lot of flavors out there. Flavors of teams, flavors of methods, right? Flavors of, and you might not prefer one flavor over, like everybody has their preference for how they're going to do things. Every team has its own feel to it, right? Its own flavor. And you might be like, oh, I hate that. I hate Rocky Road and mint chocolate chip. Can't we just do vanilla, right? Why can't we just do vanilla? Well, that's great. You like vanilla, but here's the thing, bud. It's all ice cream. Ice cream is good, right? It's ice cream. And that's what we have to remember, is that sometimes it might just be a different flavor than yours. Travel ball is a flavor. High school ball is a flavor. Recreation ball is a flavor. Club ball is a flavor. And but we're all coaching ice cream.
It becomes even more granular than that.
It does.
By person.
Like how do you eat it, right? Like if,
exactly.
I tell you, one quote that I had in here, I talked about how it's all coming back to me now. I talked about how I used to say, and I will still catch myself saying this sometimes, boy, that team plays the game the right way. Boy, they play the right way. You ever say that? What's that look like? Is there one right way to play? And I know what I'm thinking when I say that. Like I see people hustle. All out hustle.
Talking about 2 or 3 behaviors.
Talking about some behaviors. Yeah. Or a team that doesn't hoot and holler as much, and they just kind of, like watching a guy score a touchdown and hand the ball to the ref, as opposed to the choreographed dances and things like that. I might look at that and say, oh, look, that guy that handed the ball to the ref, he does it the right way, right? What makes it the right way? It's my preference. For me, that's eating ice cream out of a cone versus somebody who eats it out of a bowl. It's still ice cream. It's still a great game. It's still a lot of fun, and I just might not prefer to eat it the way that guy does.
And the better coaches, I would venture to say, are the ones that have a vast knowledge of all those different methods and are able to tie the correct method that they need to that group of people that they're trying to motivate and lead in that season.
I think you see. Yes, it's going to be different next year, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Right. Team chemistry, team personality changes from year to year, for sure.
Absolutely.
So, you can't, you have to adapt to that. It's a great chapter. It's a great concept. And, that's why, you and I continuously want to read and research, and that's why we're here today, to send the word out to everybody else. Continue to grow and continue to seek change.
Change is not a 4-letter word, and sometimes there are multiple right ways to do something, right? I actually say that all the time in baseball. I mean, we can no longer say, look at one kid's swing and say, you need to make your swing look like that kid, right? Because that's the right swing. There are some principles that we want to make sure that are consistent in everybody's swing, but boy, they look different. Pitching mechanics, they look a lot different. And there's some principles.
But you know what? If you got a kid that gets up there and he's hitting 650 and he's got 10 home runs on the season, and his swing's junk.
Oh, I
It
know.
works, baby.
Some of the ugliest swings I've ever seen. You could put a rake in some kid's hand, and he'd go up there and hit a base hit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Good
Yeah.
stuff.
Yep. Good talk to you.
Well, I
Sorry
know you've
was,
got to get to a meeting, but we gave you
some
about
physically
5
today.
minutes to spare there. Yeah, you got to get to feeling better. You got the post-cruise yuck going on there, it sounds like.
I think my allergies kicked in early. My body got all switched up in that warm weather.
Yeah.
I'll be back soon enough.
Back like you never left.
That's right.
All right. Go Brock
All right,
Purdy.
Chris, good seeing
I
you.
can't say go 49ers. There's no way anyone is saying go go Chiefs. So I'm not a 49ers fan, but I really like Brock Purdy. I
love Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I like the story that Parker told us about his family, and we it's obvious that he's a very God-centered human being, and so
Yep, absolutely.
go get him.
Watch out for him. See you, Coach.
Yep.